On a gloomy January day in 2014, Richard Berman received a chilling email message from his ex-wife Jennifer. The letter contained an ominous warning about the inevitable retribution for his actions. She wrote that the graver the sin, the more terrible the punishment that Richard deserved and could not escape, because deep down he was well aware of it. Alarmed, Richard dropped everything and immediately rushed to his former wife's house, hoping to prevent a tragedy. But when he arrived at the scene, he bitterly realized that he was too late. Fate first brought Richard and Jennifer together at a friendly party back in 1990. He had just turned 27 and she was 24. The attractive, graceful blonde immediately caught the young man's eye. A month passed, and they were already dating. At that time, Richard was just starting his career path at a real estate company, while Jennifer worked as a nurse. Their modest earnings were only enough for a small apartment in West Palm Beach, where the lovers moved in 1991. Soon Richard proposed to his beloved, and she happily agreed to become his wife. A lavish wedding was held the following year in Miami. The couple dreamed of a long and happy married life, but reality turned out to be harsher. The first years of marriage for the Bermans passed carefree and harmoniously, but later the relationship was overshadowed by the husband's jealousy. The reason was an accidentally noticed scene at Jennifer's work. Richard saw how carefully and tenderly she communicated with one of the patients. The man was seized by a suspicion that his wife and the patient were connected by more than just medical care. Richard's irritation grew more and more, and he resolutely demanded that Jennifer quit the hospital and devote herself to the household. Thanks to her husband's career takeoff, his income was quite enough for the family to live comfortably. So having left her job, Jennifer gradually got used to the new circumstances and found many interesting activities. In 1994, the couple bought a chic mansion for $1 million on credit. The house was located in an elite historical quarter of the city. Jennifer enthusiastically set about arranging their new family nest. From the very beginning of their marriage, the Bermans dreamed of having children, but for a long time they were out of luck. Only in 1997, after exhausting and expensive treatment, Jennifer finally became pregnant. The long-awaited baby boy Alex was the first to appear in the family, and a year later, daughter Jacqueline was born. The young mother adored her children and totally devoted herself to their upbringing. Jennifer was a sincere fan of classical music and was delighted to discover that the kids shared her interest. When Alex turned 6 and Jacqueline 7, their parents sent them to a prestigious art school in West Palm Beach. The young Bermans turned out to be remarkably gifted. Alex mastered the cello brilliantly, while Jacqueline excelled at the violin. In addition, they studied brilliantly and were often held up as an example to other schoolchildren. Taking care of her son and daughter's education, Jennifer persistently drove them to lessons, rehearsals and concerts. Alex and Jacqueline constantly performed as part of the school ensemble. Meanwhile, the head of the family, Richard, worked with dedication, providing his loved ones with a decent standard of living. Slowly but surely, he climbed the career ladder. In 2005, Richard was appointed head of the same firm where he had come as an intern 15 years earlier. But just 2 years later, the mortgage crisis erupted in America, leading to a collapse in the real estate market. The country was engulfed by a wave of layoffs, bankruptcies and falling stock prices. Richard's company survived, but his earnings decreased markedly. He could no longer single-handedly provide the usual level of well-being for the family. Although Richard once swore to his wife that she would never have to work again, financial difficulties forced him to break his promise. The man asked Jennifer to find a job so as not to lose their luxurious home. However, after 13 years of being a housewife, the woman had become so accustomed to her status that she flatly refused to return to the hospital. The couple's relationship rapidly deteriorated, and in 2008 Richard filed for divorce. Such an unexpected turn forced Jennifer to come to her senses. After all, without her husband's support, she would not be able to maintain her usual way of life. Coming to her senses, the woman nevertheless got a job as a nurse. Seeing his wife's efforts, Richard changed his mind about divorcing and withdrew the application. The couple lived together again, but their relationship was no longer as happy as before. Although the Bermans continued to live under the same roof, their relationship was no longer as joyful and cloudless as before. A close friend of Jennifer's once confessed that trust had simply disappeared between them. Outwardly, they still seemed like the perfect couple, but in reality this was far from the case. The woman believed that her husband had meanly betrayed her, first forcing her to quit her job and then to get a job again. She could no longer trust Richard. The years passed, and the consequences of the economic crisis were still making themselves felt and significantly affecting the well-being of the Berman family. In 2010, they had to sell their luxurious home for $1.2 million, pay off accumulated debts, and buy more modest housing with a mortgage in a less prestigious neighborhood of West Palm Beach. The alienation between Richard and Jennifer grew. They existed under the same roof more as neighbors than as a happy married couple. The only reason they stayed together was for the sake of the children. Richard allowed himself affairs on the side, while no one knew for certain about Jennifer's possible romances. Her husband's infidelity was the last straw for the woman. In August 2012, she learned about Richard's relationship with a young mistress. Jennifer filed for divorce and demanded that the cheater get out immediately. However, Richard was outraged by such a prospect. He was not going to leave the house for which he was still paying the mortgage. The man stated that he did not plan to divorce and was quite satisfied with their current relationship. He warned his wife in no uncertain terms, "You won't get a cent from me. Don't expect that after the divorce I will leave you the house, and I will continue to pay the loan and alimony as well." The divorce proceedings dragged on for a long time, because neither Richard nor Jennifer wanted to make concessions. They continued to live together with their children Alex and Jacqueline in their shared home. It is known that then the man made considerable efforts to make his wife leave on her own. He made a mess in the house, quarreled, cursed. And once, when the children were visiting their grandmother, he even invited prostitutes to the house and spent the night with them, while Jennifer was forced to listen to the loud cries of night butterflies from the next room. Shocked by such an outrage, the woman did not expect such abomination from her spouse. She went to the police with a complaint about emotional abuse by her husband. Jennifer hoped to get a court ban that would not allow Richard to approach her and the children, but lost the case. He hired the best lawyers and defended his right to live in the house with his wife. In this fierce war, the spouses at least did not use Alex and Jacqueline as bargaining chips. But in the spring of 2013, Richard arranged another party at the house with dubious guests, and Jennifer's patience ran out. She stated that she was taking the children and going to her mother, who also lived in West Palm Beach. The woman's mother was already quite old and suffered from serious illnesses. All her pension went to medicine and visits to doctors. Jennifer understood that she could not count on the help of her sickly mother. Richard was still delaying the divorce, which gave him the legal right not to pay alimony. So the entire burden of supporting Alex and Jacqueline fell on Jennifer's shoulders. In April 2013, the woman even pawned an expensive watch, a memento from her late father. With the money she received, she bought clothes for the children and filled up her car with fuel. Jennifer was falling into despair. She fired her divorce lawyer because she simply could not afford to pay for his services anymore. At the same time, the unhappy woman filed a petition with the court asking Richard to be obliged to help her financially, but the man was adamant. Jennifer continued to work as a nurse at the hospital, performing her duties well. But due to a chronic lack of money, she was forced to look for additional part-time jobs. At night, she looked after elderly men, working 12 hours almost every day. But then the exhausted woman did not yet suspect what a terrible ordeal fate had in store for her. In September 2013, Jennifer's mother's health deteriorated rapidly, and a few days later the elderly woman passed away. The daughter, who was already struggling with life's hardships, was stunned by the death of her closest person. She fell into a deep depression and almost stopped appearing at work. The woman lost any desire to fight, and her debts began to grow rapidly, like a snowball. In November 2013, the Bermans finally officially divorced. Jennifer cherished the hope that now she would be able to get half of the house, and Richard would start paying alimony. She believed that life would finally get better, but reality turned out to be much harsher. It was then, oddly enough, that Richard's business took off. The man became a successful realtor and sold estates worth several $1 million in South Florida. Despite his official divorce status, Richard was obliged to pay alimony to his ex-wife. However, on paper, his monthly income barely reached $2,888, so the court set the minimum possible amount of payments, $600 for each child. In addition to alimony, the father also paid for medical insurance for Alex and Jacqueline and helped maintain Jennifer's car. As for the Bermans' shared house, Richard, using his connections in the real estate industry, hindered the process of selling it in every possible way. Jennifer could have sped up the deal by hiring lawyers, but the woman barely made ends meet and had no money for it. Meanwhile, Richard bought a new chic estate for $1.5 million and a luxury Bentley, registering both purchases to his real estate agency. However, it should be noted that the father did not forget about his own children. He showered them with expensive gifts, took them to restaurants and various events. Probably, in this way, he sought to lure Alex and Jacqueline to his new home, showing them that he could offer much better living conditions. The battle of the ex-spouses was frankly unequal. Jennifer's total monthly income barely reached $2,000. The woman paid for the elite art school for the children, bought food, and as a result had practically no money for herself. She continued to huddle with her son and daughter in her late mother's house, when suddenly she was in for another unpleasant surprise. It turned out that the old woman's housing was mortgaged to the bank. Jennifer's mother had once taken out a huge loan for treatment, desperately fighting for her life, but said nothing about it to her daughter. In December 2013, the woman received a notification from the bank that in February of the following year she would have to vacate the house, which the financial institution was taking back to pay off the debt. After these events, grim thoughts began to surface in the exhausted Jennifer's mind. At the end of 2013, together with her children, she moved from her late mother's house back to their old, empty home, where once the whole family had been so happy. One day, on one of the pre-New Year's days, Jennifer complained to a friend that she was deadly tired of life and no longer saw any meaning in it. The friend advised her to see a psychiatrist immediately. The woman heeded her words and made an appointment. The doctor recommended that she undergo several sessions of psychotherapy, but the desperate patient had neither the money nor the time for it. She had to limit herself exclusively to antidepressants, which, unfortunately, did not improve her psycho-emotional state. The final straw for Jennifer was the confession of Alex and Jacqueline that they longed for a better life and wanted to move in with their father. At the beginning of January 2014, the woman collected all her meager savings, bought a hunting rifle with a silencer and ammunition. On the night of January 12th to 13th, she waited until the children were fast asleep. Taking the weapon, the unfortunate woman first went to her son's room, then to her daughter's. After that, she sent a message to her ex-husband with the words, "You deserve this," and pulled the trigger a third time. Richard read this message only a few hours later. He dialed Jennifer's number, but no one answered. The agitated man hastily gathered his things, got into the car and rushed to his ex-wife. It was about 8 in the morning. On the way, he called 911. Despite the dispatcher's persistent warnings to wait for the police, Richard burst into the house, and saw a terrible picture there. Going up to his son's bedroom, he heard the alarm clock ringing, but Alex was lying motionless in bed. Coming closer, the father noticed that blood was flowing from the boy's ear. The man could not believe his own eyes. Rushing to his daughter's room, he saw that Jacqueline was also lying in bed with a gunshot wound to the head. Her face was horribly disfigured. Jennifer was found in the kitchen in a pool of blood, a rifle lying nearby. On the round glass table stood 2 empty bottles of wine, and there was also a suicide note written by the hand of the former wife, "I sympathize with those who loved us and who are now in pain." As it turned out, Jennifer sent the same message by email to her cousin, with whom she was very close. The woman wrote that she had no strength left to fight life's adversities, so she intended to end her life and take her children with her. The police officers who arrived at the scene of the tragedy officially declared all three dead. At the time of death, Alex was 16, Jacqueline was 15, and their mother was 48 years old. Studying the court documents on the divorce, the investigators learned that Jennifer had repeatedly complained that her husband had doomed her to poverty. The woman said that she was forced to sell personal belongings in order to buy food. She also claimed that during the divorce process, when she and Richard were still living under the same roof, he bought food and other necessary goods for himself, and then hid them in his room so that neither his wife nor children had access to them. The man allegedly hid even toilet paper from his family. After the divorce, Jennifer's monthly expenses amounted to about $4,500, while her income was half that amount. Thus, the debts of the unfortunate woman grew steadily. While the divorce proceedings were ongoing, Richard did not pay the mortgage payment for their shared house even once. After becoming a widow, the woman planned to sell this housing for $590,000, but the property was encumbered by a loan. According to court papers, Jennifer's total debt to banks exceeded $600,000. The relatives of the deceased believe that it was these circumstances that caused the terrible tragedy in the Berman family. A cousin who wished to remain anonymous said that his sister had had bad thoughts before. In his opinion, Jennifer simply convinced herself that she was not able to cope with difficulties and gave up. She did not intend to take revenge on anyone. It seemed to the woman that she was doing the right thing. Jennifer simply did not see a future, and this is real madness. The neighbors of the Berman family unanimously claimed that both Jennifer and Richard were wonderful parents. The couple rarely quarreled, except that during the divorce process, loud conflicts flared up between them. One of the neighbors admitted that 2 days before the tragedy, he met and talked with Jennifer. The woman looked sad and depressed. There was something strange about her face, as if she had become a completely different person. The eyes of the unfortunate woman seemed empty. Then Jennifer suggested that the neighbor buy their house at a low price, because she wanted to get money as soon as possible to pay off debts. At the end of the conversation, the woman dropped a mysterious phrase, "I'm ready to go to a new world." The man said goodbye to her, and then told his wife about this strange conversation and expressed concern. However, she believed that they should not interfere in other people's affairs. Richard Berman had a very hard time coping with the loss of his son and daughter. Some sources claim that for a while the man even became a hostage to alcohol, but later he pulled himself together. In one interview, he admitted, "It's all horrible and terrifying. Once Jennifer was a wonderful wife, a loving mother, but the divorce deprived her of her mind. Seeking to take revenge on me, she dealt a devastating blow to the most precious thing I had. This is the most disgusting and most dastardly crime one can imagine." In 2015, Richard Berman suddenly found several million dollars, which he used to establish a fund to help talented students of the Dreyfus Art School, where his deceased children had once studied. This organization is still operating today. It is known that now the 60-year-old widower is married again. He still lives in his luxurious estate, managing a real estate company in West Palm Beach. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Until next time, friends.